Hey everybody, Craig Deluz here from FPC headquarters with an important update on an investigation. Now, back at the end of August, we told you about a story that had broken regarding some of the coaches in the Southeastern Conference, football conference. Basically, a reporter had asked all the coaches who were on a teleconference about their position relating to their players owning handguns. Now, the guy who asked the question was very specific. He specifically wanted to make sure they understood he wasn't talking about hunting. He wasn't talking about the school's policies, but he specifically wanted to know what the policies of each of the coaches were relating to the ownership of firearms. Now, if you remember back, there were a few coaches that actually came back with some responses. Well, let's just say that they weren't exactly consistent with the law or the Constitution. And now we're finding out that the statements that they made in many cases weren't even consistent with their own school's policies. Let's start with, let me just share with you real quick. So here's what we did. So after I last talked with you about this item, the Firearms Policy Coalition, the Firearms Policy Foundation, actually sent a Public Records Act request to all of the schools in the SEC. And we asked them for three specific things. The first, we asked them for all records that are relating to policies, practices for the position of the university when it comes to the acquisition, possession, storage, or carrying or transfer of firearms. So we want to know, okay, what's your policy relating to firearms? Then we asked, that's on campus. Then we asked them, well, we want to see anything, why don't you send us anything relating to just overall for all sports policies? Once again, same thing. What's your policy regarding ownership, storage, carrying, transfer, yada, yada, yada. Then we specifically wanted to ask relating to the football programs because those were the coaches who were asked the specific question. Now, let's take a look at what some of those coaches had to say. If you recall, probably the worst offender was Coach Mark Stoops, who, by the way, isn't having the best season. So he's not only is he not a very good advocate of the civil rights and the Constitution, he's also not a very good football coach, evidently. But when asked the question, he said, we don't allow any handguns. I've made it very clear to them that I do not want them owning a handgun, even if they have a legal permit. And they obviously can never have a handgun on campus. Now, having said that, the University of Kentucky actually sent us their policy. Now, interestingly enough, the first part of it is basically is not true. So in other words, the University of Kentucky does not have a policy barring their athletes from owning handguns whatsoever. In fact, relating to these sports programs, there's no ban on ownership of firearms. In fact, they could produce no written policy that stated that handgun ownership, legal handgun ownership, was in fact prohibited. Which once again we found interesting because maybe, and so, oh, by the way, what we did with that was we actually went back to the University of Kentucky and informed them that their coaches' statements were inconsistent with their university policy and asked them to take some steps to demonstrate that Coach Stoops understood the university policy and was in compliance with that policy. We'll keep you up to date to find out if we hear anything new. Mississippi State University, what we got from their coach, basically Dan Mullen, he said, we have no weapons policy on the team, that, I don't think there's any need for our guys to carry weapons. Now, once again, the campus policy stated that they don't allow you to have a handgun on campus, but there is absolutely nothing in their policy that states that you are not allowed to own a handgun. Once again, we've asked the Mississippi State actually once again provide some reference or some evidence that their coach is consistent with the policy. Now, an interesting one was Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M, their coach, Coach Kevin Sumlin, says, we have a no handgun rule on our team since we've been here. But what's interesting is that now this is a school that actually had a policy that allows campus carry if you have a legal permit. So not only is his position inconsistent with, first of all, the general law, the ability to be able to own a firearm, but even their university or campus policy, which is consistent with Texas state law allowing campus carry. And then the last one, this one was probably the most interesting, the University of Missouri. Now, the University of Missouri's coach, his statements were really kind of halfway. You couldn't really tell, if you give him the benefit of the doubt, whether or not he believed that they had a policy against it. But, and they even came out immediately afterwards and said, well, no, we don't have a policy that prohibits handguns. But actually, if you look at their code of conduct policy for their athletes, it specifically says, where is it? Right here. It says that the possession of any firearm is strictly prohibited. Now, when the campus was asked, when the executive, I think the assistant athletic director said, well, that only refers to carrying on campus. But that's not what the policy says. So, once again, we have inquired of the University of Missouri to clarify their policy. In other words, they need to rewrite that policy to make sure that it specifically speaks to carrying on campus. Now, you can find all of this information if you go to the Firearms Policy Foundation's website. That's firearmspolicyfoundation.org. We'll actually include a link to this specific video right below. In the description of this video, we'll provide a link to this specific thing. If you want to go and actually listen to all of the quotes, you can go to Firearms Policy Coalition /SEC. You can actually listen to the audio of each and every one of their quotes. But folks, this is the sort of stuff that we're doing right now. You need to understand that, and I get it. You're like, well, you may not care about college football. You may not care about the universities. But here's the thing. Students are being brainwashed into believing that the right to keep and bear arms is not really a right. That, it's a right, but it's not really a right. And these are the people who are going to be our doctors. They're the people who are going to be our lawyers. They're the people who are going to be our police officers. They're the ones that are going to be our teachers, university and then K-12 teachers that don't believe in the constitutional right to keep and bear arms. It's important that we stand up for their rights and in that process help educate them how important it is that they stand up for their rights. And even if they don't exercise their right to keep and bear arms, they need to understand the importance of standing up for it, because if they don't use it, they may lose it. If they don't use their First Amendment to protect the Second Amendment rights, they may wind up losing both. So I want to encourage you, go to firearmspolicyfoundation.org, check it out, check out the story, just follow the link that's listed below, and support the Firearms Policy Foundation and our efforts to expose civil rights violations wherever they're found. This is Craig Deluz coming at you from the FPC headquarters. We'll see you real soon.
If you like these updates, please share them with your friends and subscribe to our YouTube channel.